Please, God, don't let me die out here tonight, the boy whispered, his teeth shaking so hard the words almost broke apart in the dark. He sat on a torn piece of cardboard outside a grocery store in downtown Chicago. His thin hoodie, no match for the sharp December wind that cut through everything. Each breath came out like a small white cloud, and his fingers were so numb he could barely feel the metal necklace he kept tucked under his shirt. He pulled it out anyway, the small silver guitar charm pressing into his palm, as if it could somehow give him strength, as if it could talk back and say he would be okay. People walked past with heavy coats and shopping bags, their boots crunching on old snow, most of them not even turning their heads his way. One man dropped a few coins without looking, the metal making a bright sound on the ground that felt louder than his own soft prayer. The boy stared at the coins, then at his shaking hands, and wondered if he would have enough strength to bend down and pick them up before someone else did. "Baby, where is your coat?" A woman's voice cut through the wind, sharp but warm, like when someone yells your name to save you from stepping into the street. The boy lifted his head slowly and blinked, trying to clear the blur from his eyes as he looked at her. She was black like him, with brown skin and tired eyes, her nurse scrubs peeking out from under a thick winter jacket, a grocery bag hanging from one arm. A snowflake had melted in her hair near her forehead, leaving a small wet spot that made her look both strong and a little scared. "You can't sit out here like this," she said, taking a small step closer, but not too close, like she knew he might run. He pulled his hoodie tighter around his thin chest, shoulders curling in, as if he could hide inside his own body, and his hand closed even tighter around the necklace until the edges of the charm dug hard into his skin. "I'm fine," he lied through chattering teeth, because that was the word he had learned to use whenever grown folks looked at him with that mix of worry and distance. The woman watched him for a long second, like she was trying to decide if she should listen to his words or to the way his whole body shook. And then she sighed and moved her grocery bag to the other hand. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice softer now, the kind of soft people use when they talk to babies or to someone who is holding back tears. "Malik," he said after a short pause, his voice rough, like it had not been used in a while. He did not give a last name because that part always felt like a lie anyway, with all the homes and papers and different names people had put on him. "Well, Malik," she said, and his name sounded strange and almost safe in her mouth. "I'm Angela, and I am not about to leave a child out here to freeze." She held up a hand when he started to shake his head, her gold bracelets making a soft jingling sound. "Come on," she added, nodding toward the diner across the street with banged-up red letters in the window. "Let me buy you something hot to eat. You can warm up for a little bit. No strings, just food and heat." Malik looked at the diner, then at the moving cars, and then back at her eyes, and slowly, as if his bones were older than he was, he pushed himself up from the cardboard and followed her. They crossed the street together, and every step Malik took, he felt the cold cement through the thin soles of his worn-out sneakers. But it was still better than sitting there waiting for the night to swallow him. He kept a small distance behind Angela, ready to bolt if she tried anything strange. His eyes, sharp from a life that had taught him nothing, came free. Inside the diner, the heat hit his face so fast it almost hurt, making his cheeks sting and his eyes water, though he would never admit that little part was from feelings, and not just from the change in air. The place smelled like coffee, fried onions, and something sweet, and the yellow light made everything look a little softer than the hard street outside. A few truck drivers sat at the counter, talking low to each other, and an older couple shared a piece of pie in a booth by the window, their hands touching on the table like they had done that for many years. Angela led Malik to a booth near the back, away from the door, and slid into one side, nodding for him to take the other. He moved slowly, his eyes darting around to find all the exits, his hand still wrapped tight around the necklace under his shirt, the small charm hot against his cold skin like it was trying to keep him alive. A waitress came over with a tired smile and a pencil behind her ear, and Angela ordered a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream before Malik could even look at the menu, and a big burger and fries, she added, not taking her eyes off him. "You good with that?" she asked, and he just nodded, because the words burger and fries had already made his stomach twist with a wild, hungry hope. When the waitress walked away, Angela leaned back in her seat and studied him, but not in the way he was used to from caseworkers and cops. Her look seemed to carry questions, not judgments. "How old are you, Malik?" she asked gently. 13, he said, though sometimes he felt much older, and sometimes he still felt like the small boy who used to sleep with a teddy bear he no longer had. Angela's eyes dropped to the edge of his shirt, where the chain of his necklace had slipped out a little, a dull silver line against the dark fabric. "That a necklace you got there?" she asked, like she was trying to sound casual, but he heard something tight under her light tone. Malik's hand flew up at once, pushing the charm back under his shirt, his whole body going tense like he had just heard a siren. "It's mine," he said quickly. "Only thing I got that's mine." Angela nodded right away, lifting both hands with her palms up, as if to show she meant no harm. "I'm not trying to take it, baby," she said in a low voice, a hint of pain in her eyes now. It looked kind of familiar for a second, that's all." The hot chocolate came, a tall white mug with steam curling up, and Malik wrapped his hands around it like he might never let go, letting the heat sink deep into his fingers. When he took his first sip, the sweetness hit his tongue so strong he had to close his eyes for a moment, like the taste itself was too bright compared to the dark he was used to. Angela watched him with a soft smile, then glanced away, her eyes drifting to nowhere, as if she was seeing some other time, some other boy, across the table. "You out here alone?" she asked finally, her voice careful, like she was walking on ice. Malik kept his eyes on the mug. "Been alone a long time," he said, trying to sound like it did not bother him, though a small crack slipped into his words. "My mom, she died last year. After that, it was foster homes. Some was okay. One was not. I left." The last two words dropped heavy between them, like a stone he had carried too long. Angela's throat moved as she swallowed hard, and her fingers tapped against the edge of the table, a restless little beat. "You've been sleeping outside?" she asked. He shrugged one shoulder, not wanting to give her the full picture of bus stations. Friends' couches, when they had space. The shelter that smelled like bleach and fear. "Since last week," he admitted. "I thought I could handle it, but—" He looked down at his shaking hands, the brown skin chapped and raw from the cold, and his eyes burned. "It's colder than it looks on TV," he tried to joke, but his voice broke on the last word. Angela laughed once, but it was a broken sound that had more hurt than humor in it. She took a deep breath, then let it out slow, her gaze dropping again to where the chain of his necklace showed at his collar. "That necklace," she said softly, like she was thinking out loud and not really talking to him. "Does it have a little guitar on it?" Malik froze, his whole body going still in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "How you know that?" he asked, his eyes narrow now, ready to grab his stuff and run if this got weird. She blinked, like she had not meant to speak her thought out loud, and her hand moved to her own neck, touching the empty space there. "I used to have one just like it," she murmured. "Long time ago." Malik snorted a little, not sure if he believed her, but also not sure why his heart had suddenly started beating so fast. "You can see it," he said in a flat tone, surprising himself with the trust. "But you ain't taking it." He pulled the necklace out, the small silver guitar charm swinging in the warm diner light, tiny scratches catching the glow. Angela's eyes locked on it, and the rest of the world seemed to fade. The clatter of dishes, the distant hum of a song on the radio, the couple laughing near the window. Everything fell away until there was only the charm and the sound of her own breathing in her ears. Her mind flew back many years, to a bright hospital room, that did not feel bright to her at all. 17 years old, scared, with no father in sight, and a mother who had said, "We can't do this, Angie. You know we can't." She had held a tiny baby boy, with soft brown skin, and a little fist that would not let go of her finger, and she had tried not to drown in the love and the pain that came all at once. She had picked out that guitar charm with her first paycheck from the night shift at the nursing home, standing in front of a little glass case at the mall, and thinking about how her baby would grow up to love music, to have a life full of songs she would never hear, on the back of the charm. She had used a sharp little tool to scratch 2 tiny letters that shook under her nervous hand, A and J, for Angela, and the name she had whispered to him when no one was looking, Jalen. She had clipped that necklace around his tiny neck on the day she signed the adoption papers. Tears dropping so fast she could barely see the clasp, promising herself she was doing the right thing because his new family would have a yard and books and full plates and Christmas trees. Now, in this warm diner that smelled like coffee and grief, the same guitar charm rested against the chest of a freezing black boy who said his name was Malik. Angela's hand shook as she reached across the table, stopping just short of touching the charm, her fingers hovering in the air like they were afraid. "Turn it over," she whispered, her voice suddenly hoarse. Malik frowned, but did as she asked, more from curiosity than trust, flipping the small guitar in his fingers so the back faced her. She leaned in close, her breath shallow, and there it was, worn and faint, but still there. 2 tiny scratched letters that had been carved by a shaking teenage girl's hand. AJ. The diner seemed to tilt for a moment, and she grabbed the edge of the table with her other hand so she would not fall. "Oh my God," she breathed, and a tear rolled down her face before she could stop it. Malik pulled the necklace back, eyes wide, looking like he might bolt right out of the booth. "Why are you crying?" he demanded, fear pushing his voice higher. Angela wiped at her face fast and tried to speak, but her first attempt came out as broken air, not words. She swallowed and tried again. "Where did you get this necklace, Malik?" she asked, each word slow and clear. He blinked, surprised by the question. My first mom gave it to me," he said. "The one who had me. The lady who adopted me. She told me that," she said. "My birth mom left it for me when I was a baby. That it was the only thing." The air between them grew heavy, thick with something too big for the small booth to hold. Angela felt like the floor had opened under her feet and the whole world was falling. But at the same time, something inside her was standing for the first time in years. "What's your full name?" she asked, her voice a mix of hope and terror. "Malik Jalen Carter," he said slowly, like he was not sure why it mattered. "I was born, they said, at Mercy Hospital, April 10th. Each word was like a bell striking deep inside Angela's chest. Mercy Hospital, April 10th. Jalen, the name she had whispered to a tiny baby while nurses moved around her, thinking of forms and rules while her heart broke in quiet pieces. Her hand covered her mouth as a sob tried to break free, and she pressed it down because she did not want to scare him more than he already was. She forced herself to breathe, then lowered her hand and looked right into his eyes, really looked, deeper than she had allowed herself to look at any stranger in years. There it was, under the fear and the tired. A little tilt to his smile that matched hers when she was nervous. The same slight crook in the left eyebrow, a familiar curve on a face she had never seen grown. "Malik," she whispered, her voice shaking like a leaf in the wind. I think I'm your birth mother." For a second, Malik almost laughed, because the words sounded like something from a TV movie, not real life. Not the life where you sleep on cardboard and learn how to blend in with shadows. But the look in Angela's eyes stopped the joke in his throat. It was not a game, not a trick, not pity. It was raw, aching, naked hope and fear tied together, and he did not know what to do with that. "You're lying," he said, but it came out weak, hanging in the air like a question instead of a sharp cut. Angela shook her head fast, tears now rolling with no shame. "No, baby," she said, the word baby slipping out like it had been waiting all these years to finally be used. "I'm not lying. I had a son at Mercy Hospital, April 10th, 13 years ago. I named him Jalen in my heart, even though the papers said something else. I gave him this exact necklace. I scratched these letters myself. I have the paper from the hospital still. I kept it in a box for years, and I never forgot, not one day." Malik's heart pounded hard in his chest, like it was trying to break free and run far away from this table. "But you gave me away," he whispered, the words shaking. If you really are, you didn't want me." The last part came out like a tiny child's cry, not the voice of the hard street boy he had tried so hard to be. Angela shook her head again, harder this time, her hands reaching across the table until they hovered just over his, not quite touching. "I wanted you so much it hurt to breathe," she said. "I was 17, no job, no place to go, no one to help. I thought giving you up would give you a better life than the one I had. I told myself some nice family would love you and keep you warm and safe, and you would never know the kind of nights I knew growing up. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I never stopped loving you, not for one single day. I talked to you in my head on your birthdays. I walked by schools and wondered if you were inside one of them." Her shoulders shook now, her whole strong nurse body folding with the weight of old choices. "When the agency told me I couldn't have any contact, I still wrote letters I never sent. I kept your picture from the day you were born. I kept the empty spot on my neck where I always meant to wear a matching charm, but I never did, because I couldn't stand having it if you didn't." Malik swallowed hard, his eyes blurring again, the room starting to spin with too many feelings. Part of him wanted to scream, part of him wanted to run, and a small, soft part wanted to crawl across the table and press his face into her shoulder and sleep for a week. That small part scared him the most. He stood up so fast, the table shook, the mug rattling and a little hot chocolate spilling onto the sticky surface. The truck drivers turned their heads for a second, then went back to their plates when they saw it was just some kid and a woman. "I gotta go," Malik said, his voice sharp and high. Angela rose too, her hand reaching out, then pulling back like she was afraid to grab him and make it worse. "Please, just wait," she begged. "Let me explain more. Let me show you. You left me," he shouted, louder than he meant to, his words slicing through the diner noise. The waitress froze with a coffee pot halfway to a cup, eyes wide. "You left me and I ended up in homes where people yelled and hit, and some didn't even look at me unless I was in trouble, and then I was on the street, and—" His voice broke, and he bit down hard on his lip to stop it. Angela's face crumpled, and she nodded, like each word was a punch she knew she deserved. "You're right," she said quietly. "I did leave you. I can't change that. I can't give you back all those years, or take away those hurts. I wish I could, if you walk out that door right now and never want to see me again. I will still care about you, and I will still make sure you have a warm bed tonight, if you'll let me. You don't owe me forgiveness, Malik. Not now, maybe not ever. But please don't go back out there into that cold. Not tonight. Let me at least keep you warm while you decide if you ever want to see my face again." The diner air felt too thick, like Malik could not get enough of it into his lungs. So he did what his body knew best. He turned and pushed through the door into the freezing night. The wind hit him like a slap, and his wet eyes stung as the cold cut through the heat that still clung to his skin. He walked fast down the sidewalk, his breath coming in sharp, painful bursts, his hand clutching the necklace so hard the edges dug little half-moons into his palm. Behind him, he heard the diner door open and close again, then quick footsteps on the snow-dusted sidewalk. "Malik," Angela called, and there was something in the way she said his name now that made it sound different, heavier somehow, like it belonged in her mouth the way it had never belonged to anyone else's. "Please, just let me walk with you," she panted as she caught up, not trying to grab him, only moving beside him, her boots crunching in time with his sneakers. "You gonna call the cops?" he snapped without slowing. "Turn me in. Send me back to some home." Angela shook her head, even though he was not looking. "I'm not calling anyone tonight, except maybe a pizza place if you decide you want more food," she said, a breathless, broken laugh slipping out. "I'm a nurse. I just finished a double shift. I was buying milk and cereal. That's it. I didn't go looking for you, baby, but I'm not about to lose you now that I've found you. Not to this cold. Not again." They walked in silence for a moment, their steps leaving two shaky lines in the thin snow. Finally, Malik slowed just a little, his anger burning hot but his body starting to shiver again as the wind cut deeper. My adoptive parents," he said in a low voice, not sure why he was telling her anything. "They were nice. For a while. They died in a car crash when I was 8. After that, it was my aunt, but she had her own kids and too many bills. Then CPS, then Holmes." He swallowed, the memories sitting heavy in his chest. "Sometimes I used to think about my birth mom and wonder if she was some rich lady who just forgot to come get me." Angela made a small sound, like a gasp and a laugh mixed together, wiping at her nose with the back of her glove. "I wasn't rich," she said, "but I never forgot. I just thought I had no right to look for you, that I had made my choice and the best thing I could do was stay out of the way, so your new parents could be your real parents. I didn't know they were gone, baby. If I had known you were back in the system, I swear to you, I would have moved heaven and earth to get you back." He stopped walking then, the words hanging in the air like fragile glass. They stood under a flickering streetlight, yellow glow painting long shadows on the sidewalk. Cars passed by, some with holiday lights stuck to their roofs, happy songs playing low inside. It felt like a different world from the one where this boy and this woman stood, both with eyes full of tears that froze at the edges. "I don't know if I believe you," Malik whispered, his voice small again. "I don't know what to feel. I'm mad and I'm tired and I'm cold and when you said you might be my mom, something in my chest hurt and felt good at the same time. I don't trust that feeling." Angela nodded, because she understood that more than he knew. "You don't have to trust me," she said. "Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But can you give me one small thing tonight? Let me take you to my place. Just for tonight. You can sleep on my couch with 3 blankets and full heat, and my old space heater humming so loud it might drive you crazy. No promises about tomorrow, no big talk about forever. Just one night where you are safe and warm and not alone. After that, if you want, we can go down to the county office together and see about papers. About finding proof I'm really who I say I am. But I can't stand the thought of you out here freezing again when I have an empty couch and a box in my closet with your baby picture in it." Malik stared at her, the wind tugging at his hoodie strings, his breath making small clouds between them. Part of his brain yelled that going home with a stranger was a bad idea. Rule number 1 of survival, and he had followed that rule for a long time. But something in her eyes, something in the way she did not rush him, or grab him, or make big promises. Something in the way she said couch instead of your room like she already knew not to push too fast. Made that rule bend just a little. "You really got a picture?" he asked, his voice barely more than a ghost in the air. Angela nodded slowly. "I look at it every April," she said, a sad smile touching her lips. "Talk to it like a crazy person. I tell it, I'm sorry, and I hope he's loved. I never thought I'd get to say those words to the real boy in the picture." The word boy hit him, not as an insult, but as something gentle. Something that said he did not have to be a hard, grown man all the time. He swallowed and looked up at the sky, where a few weak stars tried to shine through the city lights. Then he looked back at her. "Okay," he said. "One night. Couch. No cops. No lying." Angela let out a breath she did not know she was holding, and nodded again. "No cops. No lying," she agreed. "Just warmth and food and maybe some bad TV." Angela's apartment was on the second floor of a brick building that smelled a little like someone always cooked onions. As they climbed the stairs, Malik's legs felt weak, from both the cold and the strange new hope that had settled in his belly like a warm stone. Inside, the place was small but neat, with a worn brown couch, a striped rug, and pictures on the walls of people he did not know. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, not very big, but full of lights and simple ornaments. One of them, a little silver star, that caught his eye right away. The heat wrapped around him like a blanket, and for a second he just stood there in the doorway, not sure if he was allowed to walk on the rug. "Shoes by the door," Angela said out of habit, then paused, realizing his sneakers were torn and wet and smelled a bit like old snow and street. "Actually, keep them on till I find you some socks and slippers," she added quickly. "Bathroom's down the hall. You can take a hot shower if you want. Towels are on the shelf." He hesitated, then nodded, clutching his small backpack and moving slowly like he was in a museum, afraid to touch anything. The hot water was almost too much at first, his skin stinging as the feeling came back into his cold limbs. But soon his muscles began to loosen in a way they had not in a long time. He watched dirt swirl down the drain, along with some of the fear he did not know he had been wearing on his very skin. When he came out, wrapped in a towel Angela had set out, there was a pile of folded clothes on the sink, sweatpants, a t-shirt, and thick socks that looked like they belonged to a grown man. "My brother left those last time he stayed over," Angela called from the kitchen. "He's bigger than you, so they might be roomy, but that just means more warm air." Malik dressed slowly, feeling strange and oddly clean, like he had stepped into someone else's life by mistake. When he walked into the living room, Angela was stirring a pot on the stove, the smell of tomato soup filling the air. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches sat ready on plates, the cheese oozing out the sides in a way that made his stomach growl loud. They ate on the couch, the TV playing a game show, though neither of them paid much attention to it. Angela sat on one end, Malik on the other, a folded blanket between them like a soft line they both knew not to cross too fast. After a while, she stood and went into her bedroom, returning with a small shoebox that was old and taped at the corners. She sat down and held it on her lap for a moment before opening it, like it was something holy. Inside was a hospital bracelet, a tiny knitted cap, a faded greeting card, and a small photo of a woman in a hospital bed holding a newborn baby. She handed the photo to Malik with both hands, her fingers trembling. He took it slowly, his heart thudding loud in his ears. The woman in the picture looked younger and thinner, but the eyes were clearly Angela's, bright and wet, her smile shaky but full. The baby in her arms was wrapped in a striped blanket, his brown face scrunched in a sleepy, annoyed way that made Malik smirk without meaning to. Around the baby's tiny neck hung a little silver guitar on a chain. He did not realize he was crying until a tear dropped onto the glossy surface of the picture. "That's you," Angela said softly. "You were so small. You grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go." He traced the tiny face with his gaze, then looked up at her, seeing the same eyes, the same line of the nose, the same shape of the chin when she swallowed. "My adoptive mom," he said slowly, the word mom tasting strange on his tongue again. "She used to tell me that somewhere out there. My first mom was thinking about me on my birthday. I thought she just said that to make me feel better." Angela wiped her face with the back of her hand, laughing a little through tears. "She was right," she said. "I did think of you. I bought a cupcake every year and put one candle in it for a long time. Then I just..." lit a candle without the cake, and sat at the table and talked to the empty air like a fool. Malik leaned back on the couch, the blanket bunched up at his side, his mind full and tired. If they let me stay with you," he started, surprising himself with how much hope was packed into that small word. If, what would it be like? Angela looked at him, really looked, and the careful walls she had kept around her heart for so long started to crumble. "Messy," she said honestly. "I work nights a lot. I burn dinner sometimes. I sing off-key when I clean. I don't know how to be a perfect mom to a teenage boy, and I can't erase the past. But I can buy you a real coat. I can make sure you have a key to a door that is always yours. I can show up for school meetings and clap too loud at anything you ever do. I can try, every day, to be someone who does not leave again." The next morning, Angela kept her word and took him downtown to the county office. The building big and gray and full of lines that went nowhere fast. Malik's stomach twisted as they passed signs about foster care and services, old fears waking up, but Angela kept a steady hand hovering near his back, not touching, just there like a quiet promise. They talked to a social worker with glasses that kept sliding down her nose, and Angela laid out everything: the adoption, the necklace, the matching letters, the hospital bracelet with his birth date and her name, the baby picture. The worker looked at Malik and asked calm questions about his time in the system, about the names he remembered, about the day his adoptive parents had died. It all lined up in a way that made the woman nod slow and careful. "We'll still need a DNA test to make this official," she said, "and there will be hearings, and someone will come look at your home, Ms. Johnson. It won't be quick." The word quick made Malik's chest sink, but before he could say anything, Angela nodded. "I understand," she said, "whatever it takes. Until then, can he stay with me?" The worker studied them for a long moment, seeing the way Malik kept one hand on his necklace and the other clenched in his lap, the way Angela's body leaned toward him without her even knowing. "For now," the worker said, "I'm going to place him in temporary care with you, Ms. Johnson, while we move through the steps. You'll both have to follow the rules, but he doesn't need another strange bed this week." That night, when Malik lay on Angela's couch under 3 blankets and an old quilt that had a few loose threads, he stared at the ceiling and listened to the soft hum of the space heater in the corner. It was not the street, with its sirens and shouting and cold that felt like teeth. It was not a crowded shelter full of coughs and snores. It was quiet, and, for the first time in longer than he could remember, it felt like a good kind of quiet. Angela moved around in the small kitchen, making tea, her slippers shuffling on the floor. "You okay out here?" she called, and he surprised himself by answering, "Yeah," in a voice that sounded almost peaceful. "Good," she replied. "Tomorrow, we'll go see about getting you back in school, and maybe stop by the music store, if you want. See about a used guitar or something. Seems right, with that necklace and all." He smiled into the dark, one hand wrapped around the charm on his chest. The idea of school did not feel as heavy as before, not if he had somewhere to come home to that did not end when a social worker said it did. "I used to like music class," he said quietly. "My teacher said I had rhythm." Maybe she was lying, but it felt nice. Spring came, not all at once, but in slow, careful steps, snow turning to gray slush, then to puddles, then to tiny green spikes pushing up in the cracks of the sidewalks. The DNA test came back just like their hearts already knew it would, and one afternoon, a judge in a dark robe said words that made Angela cover her mouth and then reach for Malik's hand. "I hereby place permanent custody of the minor child, Malik Jalen Carter, with his biological mother, Angela Johnson," the judge said. And, just like that, the boy who had slept on cold sidewalks had a legal home. It was not magic. There were still arguments over chores and homework and bedtimes, and there were nights when Malik woke up sweating from old dreams of being chased or forgotten. But each time, He would hear the soft sound of Angela's steps in the hallway, and if he called her, she came, sitting on the edge of his bed, rubbing his back, no matter how tired she was from the hospital. He joined the school band, picking up a real guitar this time, his fingers learning to dance on the strings, while his heart learned to trust the idea of tomorrow. On weekends, he and Angela sometimes went downtown to hand out hot cocoa and sandwiches. Two kids who looked like he once had, eyes sharp and scared, shoulders pulled tight against the world. One chilly evening, as they walked past the same grocery store where they had first met, Malik spotted a small boy huddled near the wall, his arms wrapped around his knees, no coat on his thin frame. Without even thinking, Malik tugged on Angela's sleeve and pointed. "He looks cold," he said, feeling a deep echo in his chest. Angela followed his gaze, her eyes softening. "He does," she agreed. They went into the diner across the street and came out with a paper cup of hot chocolate and a paper bag with a burger and fries, and together they crossed back toward the boy. As they walked, Malik's fingers brushed the little guitar charm under his shirt, warm from his skin, and he thought about all the choices, mistakes, and small, brave acts that had led him here, to this street, this woman, this life. He looked up at Angela, her face set with a kind of gentle, fierce love he was still getting used to, and in that moment, he understood something big and simple at the same time. He knelt down in front of the boy and smiled in a way he once thought he had forgotten how to smile. And as he held out the warm cup, the lesson that had taken years and one old necklace to teach settled into his soul forever, in a world where you never know the story behind a stranger's eyes. The only choice that never fails is to meet every person you find with as much love and mercy as you can give.